Hi horror fans, if you watched my last video, you'll notice that this is not the video I promised was coming next. I'm still going to do that one. It's just going to be a handful of movies that I try to watch every Halloween season. But in the meantime, I thought I would cash in on the Rapture. That's right, I have sold out to Big Rapture. Big Rapture. When you gotta go, you gotta go. Full disclosure, I grew up very Catholic, but like a lot of people who grew up very Catholic, I no longer practice anything. My intention is not to make fun of or belittle anyone for their beliefs. The one thing I do believe in is, as long as you're not pushing it on anybody else, you can believe what you want. Because I don't know if any of you have been watching some of these compilations on YouTube of Rapture talk going on TikTok. It's just a lot of people preparing for the rapture, preaching about the rapture. Some people I am a little bit concerned about, where it's really not even, it's not funny. I sometimes worry about people's mental health in a situation like that. I will post a couple videos from content creators that I enjoy, that I follow, that have covered this, just in case you want a little taste of what's been going on out there. So this inspired me to do a religious horror video. There aren't a lot of Rapture-specific horror movies. There are lots of post-apocalyptic movies. There's certainly no shortage of those. But I decided to go with the theme of cults, especially because of the groupthink element that is involved in cults. When I was watching some of the Rapture Talk stuff, that's what got me thinking into that groupthink element. So it's just going to be a handful of movies that I'm talking about, a little amuse-bouche. For the most part, I tried to go with ones that haven't necessarily been talked to death. You know, I could do a 2-hour video on Midsummer. I don't know if anyone would actually like that. So for this video, I just kind of tried to run the gamut from some older things, some newer things, all of which deals with cults in some way. First one I'm going to talk about, of course, is The Wicker Man. That is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's the godfather of a lot of folk horror as we know it today. It stars Christopher Lee in what he said was his favorite role, and it really does look like he's having just a lot of fun. And it's a simple story. A London police officer goes to investigate the disappearance of a child on the island of Summerisle. This is an island where its inhabitants have very pagan beliefs, and this officer is very, very Christian. A lot of this video is just him reacting and just balking at their ways. He just can't understand how people could live this way, how they couldn't believe in Christ. He's very twitchy. So we get a look into the inhabitants' rights, their school, how they teach their children, what they're teaching their children, which of course the officer just wants no part of and thinks is evil and wrong. And to make things more complicated, he's asking about this girl, and they're saying no one here knows her. No one here knows who she is, never heard of her. All leading up to the big festival and the big reveal of the mystery that the officer is trying to solve. And I will not spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen it. It has a great ending, and it will stick with you. I don't really need to say much more about this one. It's very heavily covered. It's a classic. This movie is filled with music, which I didn't expect the first time I saw it. You see a lot of the rites that they practice. If you haven't seen it, please do. The remake with Nicolas Cage, not so much. If you want a good laugh, I would suggest watching that one. Not the beast! Now, the next one I want to talk about is The Believers, and this is one I just saw the other day. It was part of my 100 horror movies in 92 days challenge. Came out in 1987. It stars Martin Sheen, Robert Loggia.
Oh, as in, oh my God, it's Robert Loggia.
Jimmy Smits. And Martin Sheen's character is a police psychiatrist who has recently lost his wife. And now he and his young son are kind of starting their lives over again. And the father-son dynamic is really at the heart of this. I like that the focus was there. I guess you could describe this movie as white New York City yuppies do witchcraft. There's a lot of talk about the practice of Santeria in this movie. So, of course, I had the Sublime song stuck in my head the entire time. Because in this movie, there are a lot of ritualistic murders. Be forewarned, there is a lot of animal cruelty in this one. and children in danger. So police are investigating these strange killings, but the investigation gets brought closer to home when one of their officers starts acting strangely. So it is a bit of a police procedural, but just with a heavy dose of, I guess you could call it like black magic. At first, they're investigating like practitioners of Santeria, but then they realize that that is not what this is. This is something that is evil, where Santeria is not based in those practices. So I did like that they made the distinction, because sometimes movies with this, they can paint things with a very broad brush, and they'll misrepresent what a certain religion is actually about, especially something, like Santeria, where, I don't know much about it. So I'm glad that that is in there, because it is not Santeria that is at the root of these killings. It is brujeria, like black magic, like black witchcraft. So father and son are trying to put their lives back together, and Martin Sheen is getting more drawn into this investigation. Also directed by Ty West is The Sacrament. This one came out about 4 years after The House of the Devil. And this is a found footage movie about a young man and a couple of friends who go to look for his sister, who has gone to live in a religious commune, and they haven't heard from her. And this was very heavily inspired by the Jonestown Massacre. So if you're familiar with that story at all, it takes a lot from that, including the cult leader of this group. They were not shy about borrowing from that at all. And speaking of things that were kind of inspired by real life events, I'm also going to talk about Red State, which is an unusual movie considering it was directed by Kevin Smith. This is his foray into horror. I like it quite a bit. I'm not even going to say it's divisive. It's just some people liked it, some people didn't. Sometimes it's hard to reconcile that it's, Kevin Smith, who directed Clerks, and my personal favorite of his, Dogma. This has more in common with the Branch Davidians, like the David Koresh cult, where you have this group of guy friends. They get tricked into coming out somewhere, thinking, they're going to get a little sexy time, and end up caged and getting a very, very fiery sermon from this religious cult leader. And the reason I say that this has more in common with the Branch Davidians is because this story goes into more of a federal response. You have ATF officers involved. There's weaponry being used back and forth. And this is also a doomsday cult. This is probably the closest one dealing with the rapture. This cult is fire and brimstone to like the nth degree. Michael Parks is the leader, he's amazing in this. This one has a really solid cast. You've got John Goodman in there, Kyle Gallner, Stephen Root, and it doesn't shy away from the disturbing gore either. So check this one out if you haven't. Let me know what you think of it. Like I said, it's kind of you'll like it or you don't, but I found it to be an interesting take in this cult subgenre. Lastly is The Ritual. This one came out in 2017. So this is not the newer one of the same name that came out. I think Al Pacino is in it. I haven't watched that one yet. This is the one from 2017. It came out on Netflix. And this movie is about a group of men who take a trip to Sweden to do a backpacking trip through the thick, dense forest there. And they're doing it in honor of a friend who has passed. And what I liked about this one is taking place in Sweden. You've got some Norse mythology vibes, but you've also got some Blair Witch vibes. They're hiking through these dense woods, and of course, let's take a shortcut. That always goes well. And of course, someone gets injured, and they come upon this house in the middle of the woods, and it has all these runes carved into it, and then it has a very strange wooden figure in it. It's cool as hell. And this is where weird things start happening to the guys, where one of them, they find him praying to this figure like in a trance, and he has no memory of what he was doing. So we have injuries and runes, shortcuts, and of course we end up in this small Swedish village. We know when we see townspeople in like a folk horror movie like this, bad things are going to happen. This movie has one of the most original, badass creatures I've ever seen. Like, I don't know who came up with that design, but it is just amazing. It's freaky. I loved it. In this movie, it does follow your basic horror movie tropes. You know, group of friends, things start happening to them. Not all of them are going to make it. You throw in a creature. You got some creepy villagers. If this sounds like your cup of tea, go ahead and take a big gulp because I really liked this one. And those are my offerings to you. I didn't want to say too much in case you hadn't seen them, but I wanted to give you just enough info, pique your interest. Maybe they'll give you some tips and tricks to survive the rapture. I don't know. But it's always a good time to talk about religious horror. It's not always my favorite subgenre, but that's mostly because I'm personally not all that into exorcism movies. Like, the original Exorcist is a good movie. It's not one of my favorites, but I recognize it as a good film. But overall, it's just not a story that I really like. Although I did like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Last Exorcism. Those were really good. Now I'm getting off track. So I hope you liked my small plate of offerings. Let me know some of your favorites that fit this bill. And I will be back next time with some Halloween season favorites of mine. In the meantime, like what you like, don't be a dick, and empathy is a superpower.